is he was seminary trained. And of course, he did become a professed agnostic, not news the faithful here. But his son Francis, in editing his father's letters, discovers that his father deemed evolution to be, and I quote, quite compatible with the belief in a God. But you must remember that different persons have different definitions of what they mean by God. That's a human understanding, is it not? That can unite and does not label and divide. I've always loved the story from the Jewish tradition about the Tzaddik, a righteous person who is going down to Sodom and Gomorrah to convict the wicked. And as he is traveling, he passes someone who learns of his business and mocks him, saying, "You know that no one will pay you any heed. You can never change who they are." To which the Tzaddik replied, "I know I can never change the way they are, but by speaking out, I can keep them from changing the way I am." I realize in presenting to Unitarians, you accord one a wide safety net, especially if you come with the progressive message, which I do and try to always. So I know in many ways I am preaching to the choir here this morning. But again, I think it's important that we be able to talk about things in like-minded groups that we need to reinforce in ourselves and others, and perhaps teach as well and edify. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once stated, "Religion has two faces. One, the face of truth, and the other, the face of deception." And it just pains me in so many of every religious and non-religious peace-seeking group that so many of the acts of violence in the world are done with religious fervor and beliefs. Cornel West was our keynote a few years ago. Many of you know that our Progressive Religious Coalition puts on an annual Martin Luther King interfaith service. And Cornel West brought our message the year we had it down at Payne Chapel. I think we had 1,200 for that service. And Wes once opined and laments every religious tradition has been tied into various forms of domination and subjugation. every religious tradition has been manipulated and bastardized by elites to try and control believers. He says everyone, and sadly, he is correct. Whether acts of violence such as we learned of in New Zealand this week are perpetrated against Muslims, Jews, Christians, or random groups, a red thread so often is the very fact that it's due to some kind of false religious belief, some isolated and misused bit of holy writ, often to justify the violence unleashed, as if God were justifying, sponsoring, and approving of the very acts that are meted out. I would say this constitutes extreme blasphemy. Woody Allen, one of my favorite theologians too, had a routine I remember somewhat trying to sell his pastors' ways. He said, I'm really a timid person. I was beaten up by Quakers. Philip Gulley is a Quaker minister that I really revere, and one of my favorite books of his is entitled If the Church Were Christian, Rediscovering the Values of Jesus. And this first chapter is entitled, If the Church Were Christian, Jesus would be a model for living rather than an object of worship. And therein lies the problem, does it not? So much the religious disconnect and rancor in the world has to do with how God should be worshiped. And a great irony not lost on many of this august assemblage here, bright, erudite folks, is that the word religion comes from the Latin word religare, which means to bind together. And yet, quite often we see with rigid orthodoxy and right beliefs that it can achieve the exact opposite. The question how to worship God narrowly defined in Orthodox correct means has at times led to bloodshed and the taking of life. And I love, and I'll claim her, Anne Lamott's a Presbyterian, nails it when she proclaims, you can safely assume that you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates the same people that you do. And it goes on and on that's what happens. So many traditions of my own Christianity, and more specifically Presbyterianism, have so often insisted on unwavering commitment to various doctrinal beliefs. Questioning and doubting has often been equated with unbelief and heresy, rather than doubt and questioning leading to a deeper faith, a more robust faith, a more informed faith. Again, immutable beliefs have often spurred acts of violence on others. The Crusades come to mind, but violence on fellow Christians in the 5th and 6th centuries was more heinous and systematic. The Christian Council at Chalcedon in 451 was in part to settle the nature of Jesus. The two-nature doctrine was formed, with Jesus being defined as fully God and fully man in one person. But the monophysites insisted on one nature for Christ, and tens of thousands of Christians were killed by other Christians, insisting that this debate warrant to the extent of killing to prove a doctrinal point rather than following Jesus' commandment to love one another. Monophysite adherents were burned alive, and the Eucharist was used as a tool of religious suppression. Nuns and others were forced to the communion table to ingest the elements under the belief that once they had partaken, they would be of the correct doctrinal camp. Robin Myers, who was our keynote this year for our King's service, has written a brilliant book entitled Spiritual Defiance, Building a Beloved Community of Resistance. And I want to read what he has to say from that book about orthodoxy, correct beliefs that we shouldn't waver from, and that we need to maybe jam down the throats, as in the case of the Eucharist, there literally of others. Rigid orthodoxy makes it clear that this God of love we say we worship will in the end reward a person who believes the right things about Jesus, even if he must be forgiven for not practicing the love of Jesus. While the same God of love will punish a person who spends a lifetime loving others like Jesus, but cannot be forgiven for believing the wrong things about Jesus. It is enough to bring to mind the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Now, I I'm not hating on the Christian faith. I'm not hating on the Christian faith or any other by decrying certain aspects of orthodoxy or absolute changeless beliefs which adherents must believe or be punished in some way if they don't. I'm just contending what so many faithful of all generations understand, that the crux of healthy spirituality appears to be serving and following rather than correct worship stances. And for those of us who do embrace spiritual and religious traditions, our faith need not be immutable and static. I like the way the founder of the Reconstructionist movement of Judaism puts it. A religion is as much a progressive unlearning of false ideas about God as it is the learning of the true ideas concerning God. Get that? Unlearning as well as learning. And I want to hold out and say that I think what passes for genuine kinetic faith is not some kind of watered down mix and match the different traditions. That we all have to come together and believe the same thing. Yes, all truths of God, and we must respect and be taught by the different traditions which perceive and understand with nuance. But there can be healthy retention of the various faith unique holdings as well. Abraham Heschel, one of my favorite Jewish writers, marched with Dr. King, escaped the Holocaust, once said the first and most important prerequisite of interfaith is faith. Of interfaith is faith in your tradition, whether you're Buddhist, Hindu, Jain, Christian, what have you. Coalescence is the key, and the doing of faith as opposed to the believing component of faith is the test. For I believe, as the book title has it from a few years ago, the answer to bad religion is not no religion. One could say that about democracy too. Critically important again is this serving business. Do adherents of traditions flesh out love in one another, peacemaking, justice seeking, and inclusion that unites and heals versus divides and wounds. The prophets of the Old Testament, those of us familiar with the Judeo-Christian faith, were constantly talking about God didn't want sacrifices of animals and the grains. He wanted the sacrifice of the hearts and minds and spirits. Hosea, just to use one example, in passing on to the children of Israel what God had laid on his heart and mind. This would be God speaking here through Hosea. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. And the New Testament, James, the author of the book of James, writes, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm, and fill yourself, and yet do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead. So often as I look at, and I think others too, the investigation of Christianity, and to be fair, all of the religions of the world to a certain extent reveals two types of religion. One is, what can God do for me? Make me more prosperous, successful, save me. The other, what can I do for God? What gifts have I been given, and how can I use them to serve the numinous, or whatever our concept of that ultimate love in the universe is? Reality is, of course, much has been done to redeem and restore in the world that has been driven and underpinned by spiritual forces. We want to be fair about this. I mean, that's why we're here today, so many of us. We believe in the ability of spiritual truths to heal and to create. Many of the reforms of this country involving work conditions, civil rights, health care, immigration allowances, religious freedom, education, and so forth have strong origins in or special assistance owed to spiritual beliefs. While nowhere near it fully, at times we do see in pockets of humanity the verse in the Quran. Love this verse, which reads, and sometimes we actually see this at work in the world. If we had wished, we could have made you one people, but as it is, we have made you many. Therefore, vie amongst yourselves in good works. What a cool challenge that is for competition, is it not? And again, how neat would it be if the world's religions got behind that kind of competition via service, versus the correct beliefs, and this could tip governments too. Instead of competition of GNPs, nature being paved over, armed forces strength, nuclear weapons, lands conquered, countries could compete in humanitarian ways. Who has the best health care for its citizens? We currently rank 37th, by the way. Who can build the best desalination plants in the Middle East? Who can decrease their nuclear arsenal the most? Who can provide a living wage for all its citizens most effectively? Who can welcome the stranger the best via compassionate immigration stances and so forth. I close with words from the Dalai Lama. Faithful, tolerant, loving words which honor and respect various faith traditions. Buddha, Jesus Christ, and all of the great teachers created their ideas and teachings with sincere motivation, love, and kindness toward humanity. And they shared it for the benefit of humanity. I do not think that those great teachers created differences to make trouble. Our human mind always likes different approaches. There is a richness in the fact that there are so many different presentations of the way. And I would add, different is not necessarily wrong. And to God be the glory.